Picture a man who appeared to be the ideal spouse, considerate, affectionate, and always ready to care for his wives. Now, envision that this same individual was in reality a serial killer, a pathological liar, and a con artist who left a trail of devastation across 3 continents. This is the shocking tale of Malcolm Webster, the man who turned "till death do us part" into a literal sentence. How did he manage to deceive so many people for such an extended period? And what ultimately caused him to stumble in his own diabolical schemes? Stay tuned until the end to uncover the chilling details of this case that will make you think twice before uttering "I do" at the altar. Early years 1959 to 1980s. Malcolm John Webster entered the world on April 18, 1959, in Scotland, in an ostensibly stable family environment. His father, Alexander Robertson Webster, held a prestigious position as head of the Metropolitan Police Fraud Squad, while his mother, Odette Blute, was a former nurse. Despite this solid foundation, Malcolm exhibited behaviors from an early age that would raise eyebrows in retrospect. As a child, he developed a peculiar habit of feigning fainting spells, a tactic that seemed to garner excessive attention and protection from his mother. More concerning was his fascination with fire, an interest that earned him the nickname Pyro among those who knew him. Malcolm's adolescence was characterized by academic instability and elaborate lies. At 15, he decided to drop out of school, a move that signaled his lack of commitment to formal education. It was during this time that he orchestrated one of his first major deceptions, falsely claiming to be battling cancer. After leaving school, Malcolm embarked on a series of unskilled jobs, transitioning between roles such as garbage collector, driver, and clerk. This professional inconsistency in his early adult years would foreshadow the chaos he would later sow in the lives of those around him. These formative years of Malcolm Webster paint the portrait of a troubled young man whose tendencies to deceive and manipulate were deeply rooted long before his more serious crimes came to light. The combination of an apparently normal childhood with worrying behaviors sheds light on the complexity of the development of his manipulative and potentially dangerous personality. Career in Abu Dhabi 1989. In 1989, at the age of 30, Malcolm Webster found himself in foreign lands, working at Town Hospital in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. This period marked a sinister turn in his trajectory, raising the first serious suspicions about his character and actions. During his stint at the hospital, a disturbing event caught the attention of authorities. 3 children, all under 6 years old, died while under Webster's care. The deaths, officially attributed to heart failure, raised suspicions due to the rarity of this condition in such young patients. Rumors began to circulate that the children might have received fatal doses of insulin, a substance Webster allegedly injected into himself. Elizabeth Brown, a former colleague and ex-girlfriend of Webster, later claimed that supervisors had discovered this disturbing habit. The ensuing investigation was hampered by the local culture, which discouraged post-mortem examinations and favored quick burials. This circumstance unwittingly served Webster's interests, making it difficult to gather concrete evidence against him. Pressured by the ongoing investigation, Webster was compelled to resign from his position at the hospital. At this critical juncture, his father intervened, using his influence to facilitate his son's departure from the country, effectively ending any possibility of a more in-depth investigation. This episode in Abu Dhabi, although it did not result in formal charges, cast a lasting shadow over Webster's character. It was the first public indication that behind his facade as a healthcare professional, there might be someone capable of terrible acts. The suspicions raised during this period would serve as a sinister omen of the events that were to come in Malcolm Webster's life. First marriage and murder 1993–1994. The year 1993 marked a dark turn in Malcolm Webster's life. On September 3rd, He married Claire Morris, a 32-year-old woman. What should have been the beginning of a happy life together, however, quickly transformed into a macabre plot. Less than a year after the nuptials, on May 27, 1994, a tragic incident shook the local community. The couple's car, with Claire in the passenger seat, supposedly suffered an accident and caught fire. Webster, the driver, escaped unharmed, while Claire perished in the flames. Initially, the episode was treated as a terrible accident. Webster claimed to have swerved to avoid a motorcyclist, losing control of the vehicle. However, disturbing details began to emerge. An off-duty police officer, who tried to render assistance, was prevented by Webster from saving Claire moments before the car exploded. The inconsistencies in Webster's account did not go unnoticed. The vehicle showed no signs of collision, and the car's low speed at the time of the supposed accident raised doubts about Claire's inability to escape on her own. After the incident, Webster demonstrated peculiar behavior. Despite showing no injuries, he insisted on remaining hospitalized for a week, even wearing an unnecessary neck brace. This charade of grief and physical suffering extended to Claire's funeral, where Webster managed to convince even his wife's grieving brother with his emotional performance. The final blow in this macabre plot came with the revelation of the motive. Webster had become the beneficiary of a life insurance policy worth £200,000 in Claire's name. In an act of calculated coldness, he spent the entire sum within just 6 months of his wife's death. Years later, when the truth came to light, it became clear that Webster had premeditated every detail. He had drugged Claire with temazepam, deliberately parked the car near a tree, and set fire to the vehicle with his unconscious wife inside. This horrific episode not only brutally ended Claire Morris's life, but also exposed the truly monstrous nature of Malcolm Webster, a man capable of orchestrating his own wife's murder for a financial gain. Relationships and Travels, 1995 to 1997. Following the tragic events that resulted in Claire Morris's death, Malcolm Webster did not remain inactive for long. The year 1995 marked the beginning of a new phase in his life, characterized by international travel and the establishment of new relationships, always guided by manipulation and deception. Webster decided to return to Saudi Arabia, a territory that was already familiar to him. It was in this exotic setting that he met Brenda Grant, initiating a friendship that would develop virtually before materializing in the physical world. What Brenda didn't know was that she was about to become another piece on Webster's chessboard. During the time they spent together, Webster demonstrated alarming behavior. He repeatedly offered drugs to Brenda, insisting that she consume them. Brenda's constant refusal may have been the decisive factor for her survival, preventing her from becoming another victim of Webster's sinister plans. This period was marked by Webster's constant geographical movement. He transitioned between different countries, possibly in an attempt to make it difficult to track his past activities and to find new opportunities for his schemes. Curiously, even after a 10-year hiatus, in 2005, Webster resurfaced in Brenda's life. This time, he brought with him two bombshell pieces of information. He claimed to have terminal leukemia, an elaborate lie, and expressed a desire to rekindle his relationship with Brenda. As part of his plan, he proposed a romantic trip to Paris. The trip to the City of Light did indeed happen, but not without its complications. It was during this getaway that Brenda discovered she was not the only woman in Webster's life. He was simultaneously involved with Simone Banerjee, demonstrating his ability to maintain multiple parallel relationships, all fueled by lies and manipulations. This period of Webster's life illustrates his capacity to weave a complex web of relationships, always keeping his true intentions hidden. His ability to resurface in people's lives after long periods, bringing with him elaborate stories of illnesses and promises of love, demonstrates the level of sophistication in his manipulative schemes. Each new relationship seemed to be just another opportunity for Webster to exercise his control and seek personal advantages, leaving a trail of broken hearts and lives potentially in danger. Second marriage and attempted murder 1997-1999. In 1997, Malcolm Webster embarked on a new phase of his life that would prove to be as turbulent as it was criminal. That year, he married Felicity Drum, an oncology nurse in New Zealand. What initially appeared to be a fresh start for Webster quickly turned into a nightmare for his new wife. The couple was soon blessed with the arrival of a son, seemingly solidifying the union. However, behind this facade of domestic bliss, Webster was plotting nefarious plans. In less than 2 years after the wedding, he would be accused of attempting to take Felicity's life, with the aim of pocketing a substantial sum from 9 life insurance policies in her name, totaling £150,000. The methods employed by Webster were as varied as they were disturbing. During the honeymoon, Felicity experienced an inexplicable episode of prolonged sleep, slumbering for 36 consecutive hours after consuming a drink offered by her husband. This incident was not isolated. On another occasion, she slept for 18 hours straight. Felicity also reported episodes of double vision, and subsequent blood tests revealed liver abnormalities, suggesting the administration of chemical substances without her knowledge or consent. Parallel to the poisoning attempts, Webster initiated a series of acts of arson. In September 1997, he set fire to the living room furniture of their own residence. January 1999 witnessed another fire, this time in a property the couple planned to acquire in Auckland. The pinnacle of this arson wave occurred in February of the same year, when Webster caused a fire in Felicity's parents' house. To sustain his criminal activities, Webster wove an elaborate web of lies. He claimed to have suffered a heart attack and to be in remission from cancer. He fabricated complex stories about problems transferring money from Scotland to New Zealand, thus justifying the impossibility of making the payment for the house in Auckland. Webster's plan reached its climax on February 12, 1999. Under the pretext of going to the bank to finalize the house payment, he orchestrated a car accident. Claiming steering problems, Webster caused abrupt lane changes before driving the vehicle into a ditch. His erratic behavior after the accident, insisting that Felicity remain in the car while he looked for something in the trunk, raised his wife's suspicions. Webster's charade finally crumbled when, after simulating a heart attack that took him to the hospital, Felicity discovered that he had withdrawn a significant amount from their joint bank account. This revelation was the catalyst for the end of the marriage and the beginning of legal proceedings against Webster. New Zealand authorities issued for arrest warrants against Webster, encompassing charges of arson, drug administration without consent, and incapacitation of his victim. However, Webster managed to flee the country, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a traumatized wife, who would later describe her ex-husband with a single word: psychopath. The Web of Deceptions and New Targets 2000s. At the turn of the millennium, Malcolm Webster, far from abandoning his life of crimes and deceptions, merely refined his tactics, targeting new victims with increasingly elaborate schemes. This phase of his criminal life is marked by a series of overlapping relationships, all founded on meticulously constructed lies. In 2005, Webster resurfaced in the life of Brenda Grant, a woman he had been involved with a decade earlier. His return was accompanied by a moving story. He claimed to be battling terminal leukemia. This elaborate lie was not just an attempt to gain sympathy, but part of a larger plan to emotionally manipulate his victims. Simultaneously, Webster became involved with Simone Banerjee, elevating his manipulation game to new heights. With Simone, he not only maintained the facade of terminal illness, but also convinced her of his kindness and irreproachable character. So convincing was his performance that Simone, deeply in love and deceived, went as far as altering her will in Webster's favor. Webster's ability to maintain multiple simultaneous relationships, each sustained by a complex web of lies, demonstrated his capacity to compartmentalize his life and adapt his personality for each victim. He transitioned between these women with disturbing ease, keeping each of them in ignorance about the existence of the others. Webster's plan for Simone Banerjee was particularly sinister. Taking advantage of the couple's habit of going on boat trips, he apparently planned a water accident. The subsequent discovery that Simone's life jacket had been deliberately damaged revealed the extent of the danger she was in, without even suspecting. The sophistication of Webster's plans during this period demonstrates an escalation in his criminal audacity. He was not only seeking immediate financial benefits, as in previous cases, but now targeting substantial inheritances, preparing the ground for crimes that could yield long-term fruits. Webster's modus operandi evolved to include not only emotional and financial manipulation, but also the creation of completely fictitious personas. He presented himself as a sick, vulnerable man worthy of pity, gaining not only the trust, but also the total devotion of his victims. This period of Webster's life illustrates how emotional predators can operate for years without being detected, moving between different social and geographical circles. His ability to reinvent himself and adapt his stories for each new victim demonstrates a level of calculation and emotional coldness that defies comprehension. The web of deceptions woven by Webster in these years would only begin to unravel when authorities finally connected the dots of his long criminal history, revealing a pattern of behavior that spanned decades and continents. Investigation and trial, 2006 to 2011. The year 2006 marked the beginning of the end of Malcolm Webster's long criminal career. UK authorities, finally connecting the dots of a series of suspicious events spread across decades and continents, initiated a thorough investigation into the past of the man who had left a trail of destruction wherever he went. The trigger for this investigation came from an unexpected source. During a business trip to England in June 2006, one of Felicity Drum's sisters, Webster's second wife, decided to share her suspicions with the British police. This crucial testimony was the catalyst that authorities needed to initiate an in-depth investigation. As investigators dug into Webster's past, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The similarities between the cases of Claire Morris and Felicity Drum were impossible to ignore. In both situations, Webster had married successful women, taken steps to be the beneficiary of their life insurance policies, and then orchestrated accidents that could have resulted in their deaths. The net began to close around Webster. New Zealand authorities, who had already issued for arrest warrants against him years earlier, collaborated with the investigation, providing crucial evidence about his crimes in that country. Each new detail discovered only reinforced the image of Webster as a calculating and relentless predator. As the investigation progressed, more of Webster's victims began to come forward. Simone Banerjee, initially skeptical of the accusations against her fiancé, eventually had to face the harsh reality that the man she loved was, in fact, a dangerous criminal. Her testimony about the emotional and financial manipulation she suffered at Webster's hands was crucial in building the case against him. Malcolm Webster's trial, which began in 2011, was one of the longest and most complex in Scottish legal history. For weeks, the court heard shocking testimonies from various witnesses, including ex-partners, victims' family members, and forensic experts. Each testimony added a new layer to the narrative of a life dedicated to deception and exploitation. Despite maintaining his innocence until the end, the evidence against Webster was overwhelming. The jury had no difficulty in reaching a guilty verdict. In a historic decision, Webster was sentenced to life imprisonment for the crimes committed as part of a conspiracy to claim Claire Morris's life insurance, his first fatal victim. The High Court judge in Edinburgh, recognizing the gravity of Webster's crimes and the danger he posed to society, determined that he should serve a minimum of 30 years in prison before being eligible to apply for parole. This severe sentence reflected not only the heinous nature of his crimes, but also the need to protect potential future victims. Malcolm Webster's conviction closed a dark chapter that spanned nearly 2 decades. For the families of his victims, especially Claire Morris's loved ones, the sentence brought a belated sense of justice. However, for many, including the case investigators, there remained the unsettling suspicion that Webster's known crimes might be just the tip of the iceberg, with the possibility of other undiscovered victims. The case of Malcolm Webster serves as a disturbing reminder of the existence of sophisticated predators in our society, capable of manipulating and deceiving for years on end. His story continues to fascinate and horrify, raising questions about the nature of evil and the limits of human justice. Thank you for listening to this fascinating story. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and share your opinions in the comments below. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future content. See you in the next video.